Hello, fellow Jayhawks. Welcome to the Bachelors in Science Investigating Careers interview series. Today with us, we have Dr. Ben Isaacs, the Head of Research and Development in Pharmaceutical Sciences in the United States, representing Argenta Global, a leading pharmaceutical company specializing in animal health. Hi, Dr. Isaacs. Can you tell us a little bit more about your organization and what you do?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon and share what I can with you about the excitement of what it is to be a science person from the science stream in the real world, trying to make a difference in the lives of animals. Uh, Obviously, many of us care for our animals, whether they are feedstock, whether they are livestock, whether they are dairy, whether they are companion animals or they're exotic animals. They're animals nonetheless, and they deserve as much attention as we get in the human healthcare. So this is a very exciting company and opportunity to be part of. And I would like to do what I can to bring the brightest and best that the KU has to offer in terms of its own graduates in science and open up possibilities of career opportunities and opportunities to not just draw a paycheck, but draw one learning something new every day, being challenged by what we face in developing drugs that are very specific to one particular animal group. It's the developing drugs for human healthcare is very challenging because the humans are so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a lot of commonality. But if you go from a cat to a dog to a pig, you're really jumping, through multiple levels of animal kingdom, and that has its challenges.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. We're wondering what attracted you to this career path and what are some of the biggest rewards of your career and your position?
Oh, what attracted me? I spent a good part of my life. I'm one of those people who have been incredibly fortunate. I've always been at the right time at the right place. I got out of grad school and a postdoc and was incredibly fortunate to land with both my feet firmly set into a very budding, exciting company in Boston, biotech company. And very shortly after being there, I realized there was an unmet need. So I decided to go out and start my own company. I ran that for about almost 20 years, and all good things come to an end. So that came to an end. And I decided to just retire and go move to Florida like everybody else does from the northeast of the United States. It's the only destination for people, Florida. So I decided to go to Florida, and that's where I was minding my business when a headhunter called and said that there is a great opportunity to build an entity essentially from the ground up, but it has to be in Lawrence, Kansas. Of course, Lawrence, Kansas, in the middle of nowhere for most people in the country. And many people may not have heard, if not for the stellar basketball program that Jayhawks have, people would never have heard of Lawrence. Okay, such is life. Same thing with Norman, Oklahoma. Nobody hears of Norman, Oklahoma, unless if you're a football fan. So if you're a good football team, everybody knows, right? So I thought about it and I convinced my family that one has not really lived life unless you have lived in the Midwest. So I brought my family here because the opportunity to help Argenta Global expand its footprint in the most critical region for animal healthcare in the United States, which is the region that stretches from one end of I-70 in Missouri, St. Louis, all the way to the other end that important to our state, which is Kansas State, Manhattan, or I should say Manhattan, Kansas. That's what we call the animal health corridor. Everything that is animal health related really happens here. This is our mecca, if you will. Okay. So, what great place then, Lawrence, which is in between the two extremes, to set our footprint, which is already there, and expand it. So that's why I decided to come, since I have had the experience of running starting a company and running from scratch in human healthcare, I thought this reasonably young dog uh, has an opportunity to learn a few new tricks. So that was what I found appealing. And so far, I only faced one tornado. So not a big deal being in Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very glad to hear you say that, even though um, some people may think that there may not be a lot of opportunities in Lawrence, Kansas, but actually, from your point of view, from your observation and your experiences, you've heard that you've seen that Lawrence, Kansas actually do have a lot of these wonderful opportunities for people who want to do something similar as you are doing right now.
Yeah. See, part of being close to the KU entity, for us, it gives us great opportunity to tap into their intellectual capital. That's very important. I came from Boston area, and you talk about intellectual capital, it is overflowing there. But there's a
Mhm.
downside to that. Because it's overflowing, people are fluid. They move around like there's no tomorrow. Somebody gives them $10 more, they're gone. That's how deep loyalty is. In Lawrence, what I found is people said, "Oh, how are you going to recruit people to Lawrence?" I got people from St. Louis applying. I got people from Manhattan applying. I got people from KU applying, and all the other schools around the local area. So I had one position open when I got here. I was able to fill it up with absolutely no difficulty. And I pulled this person from Connecticut. So,
Wonderful. Thank you. And that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is what are some opportunities at your organization for science undergraduates or science students graduating with a bachelor's in science?
well, it, as everything in life, it's up to the individual. But as an organization, we're prepared to teach, we're prepared to train, because there is a way of doing things, and there's the Argenta global way of doing things. You see, we're in a very highly regulated, highly competitive industry. People competing for cats and dogs' welfare is incredibly large. It's very stiff in that sense. So being innovative, people who can come in, think outside the box, who can come in and be willing to learn new things and apply to entirely even newer things are the kinds of people who will do very well in our organization. Now, there are many paths folks can take. I got my degree in basic science, right? I got a doctorate and all that sort of thing. But I'm as far away from science as you could possibly imagine because I blazed a path for myself as an entrepreneur first. And now, having mopped the floors and balanced books and balance sheets and so on, I'm very grateful that the industry that I have served so well for so long and has been so good to me has given me opportunities to learn other things that you wouldn't get unless you felt you had to go to B school or something like that. So, working for a dynamic organization like Argenta Global, because we not only have operations here that we are trying very hard to grow and have a bigger footprint and a more financially significant footprint, we also have operations that began in Auckland, New Zealand. We have operations in Scotland, and we have operations in Iowa. We have operations in New Jersey that are clinical research. Operations in Iowa is manufacturing. So we are tied. So someone coming into the organization could potentially spread their wings globally. One of the things I enjoyed a lot when I got into the biotech industry was the industry was so new and the opportunities were so many. We didn't even know what opportunities were there. In my case, till I hit a ceiling in terms of what was available in that industry for young companies, I started my own company. That could be very well be the case for the next KU graduate who comes into our shop. They could very well be the next entrepreneur. Who knows? Science doesn't mean mixing solutions, washing glassware, and other
Mhm.
mundane tasks. It just means you're data driven and the data takes you in one direction as my data did from a market point of view, my life has been the better for it.
Right, thank you. And what do you look for when you're selecting candidates to work with you in your company?
The first important and the most significant hire of my entire hiring career, for almost 25 years now, was a young gal who came by me. She saw my ad for my company back in Boston, and she had a bachelor's in environmental science. What impressed me was her earnestness, her desire to learn, and her ability to learn. So even though my company, fledgling as it was those days, had nothing to do with environmental science, I hired her on the spot because I saw in her someone who would think beyond her own immediate training and was willing to be coached, willing to take the risk, which is very important when you get into a new company or a fledgling small company, what have you. Yeah, if you were to go to a well established entity, they will probably put in you a small hole somewhere. This particular individual not only was my mainstay, she became my lab manager. And then when I expanded to good manufacturing based sterile products manufacturing, she came and said, Ben, I know what this company needs. I said, tell me what? And she said, you need quality control. I said, yes. And I have a feeling you're going to run it for me. So it all comes down to the individual. It all comes down to the drive they have. How are they pursuing me for the position in my Argenta global company? Where do they see themselves fitting in? And how they can go beyond what they see the world to be today. It never hurts to dream big. And I think this particular individual I gave an example of clearly had dreams bigger than what I could have envisioned for her when she sat in front of me that first day.
I think that's a very wonderful example. Thank you for that, because it really shows that there are the opportunities out there are a lot more vast than a lot of students may think they have. Some students may think that once they graduate with a certain degree, that is the career path that will be available for them. But I love that example because it really widens that perspective. Like, even though this is the degree you have, however, science have a lot of overlaps with the other segments of sciences, and they all work together because we're all living in the same world. Everything is interconnected.
Totally. They're all interconnected. What you learn in field X, you never know when it applies to field Y. Even though your classroom experiences may not dictate that connection, in real life, it will happen. And I'm also of the opinion that if a young graduate came into my shop and I'm able to tell within 6 months or less that this person is better served going on to graduate school, not because they're not useful to the organization, but their own life and their own abilities dictate they go get an advanced degree and get them that faster jump in life, I'll be the first to push them out of the door and send them that. I've done that to several people in my life, and I personally felt good about it. And they have all enjoyed that journey on academically as well.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for that. I'm also wondering, we do have students from underrepresented communities as well at KU, and I'm wondering, is there anything about your organization, your company, or your field that underrepresented students should know about? So this would include any opportunities in the field or any advice or any encouragements that you may have for them.
My perspective, I'm going to give you my personal perspective as a former employer and now an employee of a very global entity. My personal point of view as a former employer is that you never ever look at a person and judge them by what they present to you. Whether doesn't matter what their sexuality is, it doesn't matter what their faith is, it doesn't matter what they speak or where they hail from. As a businessman, you're looking for results. It doesn't matter, none of those other things matters. Because at the end of the day, Are you going to give that person an opportunity to grow? Will that person sitting in front of you, whatever they may bring to the table from everything other than science, will that benefit the organization? Those are the two questions, really. That's all there is to it. Everything else is just baloney faloney that politicians emphasize to divide us. My personal opinion, and I've been happy to have practiced that. Now, from a global Argenta point of view, we have the most diverse workplace ever. I've been exposed to many companies in human healthcare and also in animal healthcare now over the past almost 2 years. Argenta is truly a shining example of getting people in because they will contribute, not because of anything else that labels that society places on us. And for that, I'm very grateful. Remarkable.
Mm-hmm. And I am grateful as well. Thank you for that. I am glad to hear that there are such opportunities for growth for students, for employees, regardless of their identities. And the last question, but not least, I'm wondering from your own personal career path, what is one thing that you wish somebody would have told you before going into this field?
That's a great question because I've never listened to other people. When it comes to my own personal life, I just march to the drum in my head. So when I got out of grad school at University of Oklahoma, then I went on to get my postdoctoral fellowship in Maryland. And then I moved on to this incredible opportunity in the biotech industry. I knew I was charting into new territory because the roadmap had not been set out. I would have to say that the expectation was that I would go into academia myself, but the industry was so compelling. I just walked in, eyes wide open, and I think that helped me see things that others in my office next to me didn't see, who continued working for the organization while I jumped off and started my own company, and that was incredibly enriching experience. So I don't think anybody could have said anything to me at that point because I was coming from such a different place in life in terms of my training, in terms of the cultural entity that is Oklahoma, to what it then turned out in Maryland, and then finally Massachusetts. I mean, none of them are even close to each other in any way, except Massachusetts has neither good basketball nor good football. So beyond that, what can I say?
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ben Isaacs. We really appreciate your time and your sharings of the wonderful experiences and opportunities that you can share with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah. Life is good, and thank you for the opportunity to share. And hopefully we'll talk again later.